Blessings. Welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. Today we're in 2 Kings chapter 20. Then we jump over to 2 Chronicles chapter 32 and we read verses 24 through 33. Then we went to Isaiah and read chapters 38 and 39. I hope you're able to read all these today. Again, all three of these pretty much describe the exact same story out of Hezekiah. And it is a period of his life that is what I would say would be the end of his life, because the story starts out Hezekiah has a mortal illness and is about to die, and it has something to do with a boil. I don't know if it's infected or what, and that doesn't really matter, but the fact is he's about to die. So God sends Isaiah the prophet to him and tells him, Hezekiah, you've got to get your house in order because you're going to die from this. So Hezekiah, who I told you a couple days ago is one of my favorite characters in the Bible, if he had died right there, man, his legacy would have been wonderful, would have been great. Now, I'm not saying that if I had been in that situation and God said you're going to die, I wouldn't have gone, okay, whatever. But Hezekiah says the Bible says he turns his face towards the wall and he weeps bitterly and he prays to the Lord. And even Isaiah gives an account of this prayerful psalm that Hezekiah writes to God. And God hears him and tells Isaiah to relay to Hezekiah, okay, I've heard your prayers. I'm going to add 15 years to your life. Now, here's the takeaway from this and why this is so important. Up to this point, we haven't heard about Hezekiah having any children, which we know that Hezekiah, being a king of Judah, has to have a son born of him to continue this line of kings that come from the seed of David. I mean, that's a promise from God, and it carried on from David all the way to Jesus. So we know that can't be broken. So this is obviously part of God's plan. But what happens in these extra 15 years that Hezekiah prayed for is he has a son. It says he has many sons, and we know that because when the prophecy of them going off into Babylon to serve the Babylonian king, it says many of your sons or several of your sons will go. But it only names one son in particular, and this son is named Manasseh. Now we talk about how the Bible described Hezekiah in the beginning of his reign. It said he was probably the greatest king that had served Judah out of all the kings before him and all the kings after him. So Hezekiah was way up there. I mean, he was right up there with David. Even says he was better than the kings that had come before him. So Hezekiah is an incredible king. Followed God up until this point, and for some reason, these last 15 years turn out kind of bad. He turns his back on God, and we see that in 2 Chronicles. And then he has his son Manasseh, and he does some things with Babylon out of pride and arrogance and trying to please, just to be a man pleaser. I'm going to show off all the riches and the things in my house, all the gold and the jewels, and it gets him in a lot of trouble. But this son, Manasseh, that's going to come out of these 15 years, we're going to see this probably tomorrow when we get started reading about Manasseh. But remember, Manasseh comes from a king that was the best king Judah had. Now, you wonder what King Hezekiah passed on to his children and how he taught his children. Because even in his prayer that I mentioned earlier that's found in Isaiah, in chapter 39, verse 8, Hezekiah's prayer includes this verse. It says, in chapter 38, verse 19, I went down too far. This is a verse out of Hezekiah's prayer. It is the living who give thanks to you as I do today. A father tells his son about your faithfulness. And it made me wonder, did Hezekiah actually follow through with his prayer? Did he teach Manasseh and his other children about God and the wonderful things that God had done for him and how God had provided and God had made him the greatest king that Judah ever had? Did he brag? Did he give credit where credit is due? That Manasseh didn't do all this on his own. It was from God. We're going to look at that a little deeper as we get into Manasseh's kingship starting tomorrow. So read ahead. Come back tomorrow with having read 2 Kings chapter 21, verses 1 through 18. Then go to 2 Chronicles and read chapter 33, verses 1 through 20. And then we're going to go back to Isaiah again and finish it off in Isaiah chapter 40. But until then, you guys be safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.